The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. The Mets in the zone. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I've got the Brothers Rose with me, where sans Robert Cole for a while, but Marty and Bernie Rose are both here. Start with you, Barn. How you doing?
Hanging in there, starting to feel good. So that's a good thing.
That is a good thing, and we have a lot to be grateful for. We are all three had a Jackson Heights upbringing, and we were all three. We are above ground with our memories.
Good place to be.
Yes, good place to be. Yeah.
That's a good combo right there. We grew up. Marty, how are you, by the way?
I'm doing fine, Ralph. Doing well.
Good. We grew up talking about ball, and we kibitz on the show just basically the way we did at Jack and Manny's Lunch and Egg 60-some-odd years ago. Just talking ball, we're engrossed with it.
Yeah. Hanging on the corner.
Hanging on the corner. It was a lot of fun. And we are, through the miracle of Facebook, in touch with a number of those who hung on the corner in those days.
It's true.
Absolutely.
It's great. Shout out to Stan Weiss, who was always on the corner and always had a baseball opinion. We weren't opinionated, but we had opinions, and they could be swayed. Some of us were opinionated, but basically the arguments didn't end up in fights ever.
No.
I can't.
No, but our neighborhood, when we were very young, when our neighborhood was new, the people came from all the other boroughs. So out of our group, there was Yankee fans, Dodger fans, and Giant fans. And we stood on the corner, like you just said, and everybody had something to say. You know?
And discussed it. We talked trades, and we learned to debate. We learned to articulate our feelings, and it was just a great place. We had how many buildings? 16 buildings, a co-op with the elementary school and a big schoolyard right in the middle of it. And across the street, when we were really young, was Aces Field, which turned into Southridge.
Right.
And Aces Field had a dirt field. And
Blessed Sacrament played ball there. You know, the church, the school, Blessed Sacrament, which was, I think the church was down on like 35th Avenue and somewhere in the 90s there. Yeah, I remember watching them play there.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Bernie, you don't remember that, I'll bet. Okay.
I do not.
Because I didn't remember the teams that were playing, but Blessed Sacrament, now that'll stick in my head. Yeah.
I just remember dirt lots there, and I have no memory of a ball field. I remember Blessed Sacrament. But
yeah, the ball field was on, I think, 93rd Street.
Aha.
Right off of Northern, yeah.
All right.
Towards Junction Boulevard.
Right.
Where they still had a trolley, if I recall.
Well, that I don't recall.
Yeah,
I think in the very, very early days,
think they did. Yeah.
Yeah, there was still a trolley there, and I remember the tracks were still showing through even when they tried to cover them up.
Do you guys remember on 91st Street before it was paved? Maybe you do, Marty.
Before it was paved.
Right. They had a junk truck with a horse go through. Yeah, I remember that. Early memories of Northridge.
Well, I remember them building the building right across the street. They were still building it when we moved in. I was 5? I could barely see over the windowsill, and but they were building the house, the building across the street, and it was fascinating as a kid, to watch that.
Yeah, sure.
Unbelievable.
Where Jeffrey and Warren grew up, Jeffrey Foreman.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was 1, so I don't really remember that.
Satrin, Braverman.
Right.
They all lived in that building now.
And what was interesting about that neighborhood, there were 4 or 5 buildings within our vision and our immediate area, and each building had 4 or 5. Your building had the Beckers, 4 or 5 families with 2 or 3 kids.
Right.
So we had an amazing amount of acquaintances, and got to learn a lot about human nature, and it was terrific. So anyway, what isn't terrific these days is, I guess the overall thing is who's in first place right this moment. The New York Mets are in first place. I attribute a lot of that to the recent collapse of Atlanta, who looked like they were going to go right through us like Grant went through Richmond, if you'll excuse the pun. They slowed down.
The Western road trip kind of cooled them off a little bit. Seattle and San Francisco. Yeah.
Well, to come home and get swept by the Cubs, that could have been devastating.
Very bad.
It's just that, like you said, Atlanta picked the wrong time to go on a 4-game losing streak, which might be the longest of the year for them.
Could be.
I don't know, but that certainly helped.
And we lost the 3-game series for the first time this year, and it was the Cubs, for crying out loud. That was galling.
Well, the pitching collapsed, especially Peterson was the game was over in the first inning, but the pitching has been bad. The pitching's been bad, and there's been almost zero hitting. I just want to say that they're missing Marty in that 2-hole very badly. To me, he could be the best player on the offense. He always comes up big with something. They need him back as soon as possible.
Right.
Well, Alonso has cooled off some. He hit a home run yesterday, but he has cooled off some, and you may be right.
Well, there's a blurb. What encourages me, and I put a little joke post on Fret Not, this is our year on Facebook, but it's true, and the reason is the team is still a team. No one is pointing fingers. You don't hear complaints that a lot of teams go through when they're going bad. I think they'll be all right. They'll be right there. You can't discount Atlanta in any way. But you're right. I can't agree with you more about Marty.
Yep.
And but look, you're missing Marty, who could be the best offensive player, at least streaking right now, and Scherzer, who on any other team would be number one.
He'll be back Monday.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, Scherzer will.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's very good news.
Mm-hmm.
Got to stop and say, are we watching in DeGrom? Are we watching the best pitcher of our generation? If he could stay, look at that ERA. I mean, 3 runs or more. He is like 84-3 if they score 3 runs for him. Some outrageous amount.
Yeah,
this
great,
guy's dominating.
I don't think the sample size is big enough.
I was just going to say
for the whole, for a career, because he came up. He was, a little older than usual when he came up in the first place, and all the injuries. He's missed a lot of time. So
it's the injuries.
Is he one of the best? Yeah, no question about it. But
now let's talk signability, though. Start with you, Mer. What do you think
about signing him?
So, yeah,
that's difficult. I don't know what he's going to ask for. Multiple years for him. It's you hate to lose him, but it's got to be questionable. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to ask for. If he's going to ask for multiple years with huge money, I got to think about that. You want to give him 1 year at a time? Yeah.
You know what also may come into play is how this season finishes.
Right.
If they win the whole thing, and then they don't want to pay him the money, they won. If they don't, or if they go out early, and it's not his fault, he pitches great, they may have to pay him. I mean, and we don't know what he's going to want, but this guy has plenty of money, doesn't he? I mean,
oh yeah. No,
I mean, the Dodgers didn't want to let Kershaw go. Kershaw's a little older, I guess, but Kershaw's only on a 1-year contract this year. They're going to have to sign him again. And
the bats woke up today. So far.
For the Dodgers?
No, the Mets 4-1.
Oh, wow.
Escobar just homered and McNeil just doubled. So 4-1 in the third inning.
Hey, Escobar is Superman.
He's gotten very hot. Yeah.
And if you look back on a quote to August, the end of August, Showalter said, I'm going to told him this. He's going to stick with him, and he's going to watch him be the Mets' most valuable player in September. He saw it coming. I have to admit that I thought he would break out. This guy hit 28 home runs last year, and he is so smooth defensively.
Yep.
And now that he's out of the slump, he's become much more animated. And
on that note, I hate to tell you, it was Lindor who hit the home run. Escobar's 0 for 1.
Well, everybody's wearing 21. It's Roberto Clemente Day.
Vogelback finally did something. He doubled in the first 2 runs in the first inning.
Right.
And now it's Lindor who hit the home run. So,
good podcast, Father.
But Escobar, he's a clutch guy, and he has been for a guy that's hitting 237. But if he's hot now, he might have had some reasons for his average going down. He was hitting a little higher earlier, I think, but.
Well, he was hurt too. He was hurt for a while.
Yeah, because he was down in the 220s and 30s for quite some time now. But look at Muncy. He's hitting 199 now, but since August 1st, finally, he raised his average 50 points, although it's easy to do when you're hitting 150. But, he was coming off the the elbow surgery, and I guess he was never right. But since August 1st, he's been hot as hell.
Mm.
So, if he stays hot.
Escobar may be hitting 237, but you look back a month, he was
right.
like 180 at a time. So, same scenario right there.
Right, it's going to come down. It's going to come down to clutch hitting and clutch pitching. I mean, that's kind of a dumb statement because obviously that's what it comes down to. But if the Dodgers play the Mets or the Braves, play the Mets or the Dodgers or what have you, it's, great pitching and great hitting against each other. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, they're going to need their 5 starters all healthy, because once you start going to the guys outside of the first 5, you're looking for trouble. Whether it's Peterson or McGill or whoever it's going to be as a starter.
Right.
Right now, they're all healthy with, like I said, with Scherzer coming back on Monday, but that's the second time he's had that same injury on the side. So, that's a little shaky because you never know when that could happen again.
Yeah, well, Barn knows the frustrations of Scherzer.
Sure, if he would have been able to pitch that game last year, they might have won again.
Right.
But
so,
he couldn't, and that's what you're hoping doesn't happen.
I also want to remind that the Giants beating Atlanta was really key right there.
Oh, yeah.
Not as bad a team as they're playing, but they've had injuries, and there's still the fan in me of being a Giant fan. Do you have the fan in you, Marty, for the old Brooklyn Dodgers and L.A.? Did you ever take a fandom? I don't remember you being an L.A. Dodger fan.
Well, I mean, I was.
He was until they left.
When we were in Brooklyn, we were born in Brooklyn. When we moved to Queens, we were still Dodger fans. We were Dodger fans until they left. And then, I mean, what's the point? You couldn't see the games. You couldn't hear the games, except the Giants you could hear, those made up games.
less Kiter. Yes.
Sound effects and everything. Reading the ticket tape and making it up as you went along. That's funny. But no, when they left, I was no longer a Dodger fan. I never really felt I was a Yankee fan, although when they were the only team left in New York at that time. But I just love watching the Mick. I mean, if I didn't find out what kind of a person he was until later on, but I mean, I remember as a young kid watching Mantle, and every time he came up, you got to stop. I want to see how far the ball's going this time. That's what I felt at that time.
We all loved him.
It was unbelievable, yeah. But I never really went back and rooted for the Dodgers, except when if there's only 2 teams left and they're in the World Series, I'm rooting for them. I'm not rooting for the freaking Astros, So, but not when they left, that was basically it for me.
Yeah, but we were always National League guys, though. So in the series, we generally rooted that way, except in those early days before the Mets, after the Dodgers and Giants left. We always rooted for the Yankees in the World Series, but because they were the only New York team.
Altshuler was a Brave fan. Stutman was a Pirate fan. Saturn, I guess, was a Yankee fan. And Stanley White was a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
Big Yankee fan. Turns out Alan Mayo was a Yankee fan. Never talked much baseball with Alan, but I did a podcast with him recently, and it was terrific catching up. He's had a blessed life, and a lot of good stories come out. A lot of tragedy, of course, like in any other community, but a lot of good stories, and you got to thank Facebook and or social media for getting it all together. Sure. Special shout out for our hometown thread to Wayne Unger, who was a recipient of the demise of Aces Field when they built Southridge. But he comes in and sets up a beautiful site for we old timers to communicate on, and got to thank him on the air a little bit. So,
you know what I remember talking about the early days again? 1958 was the Yankees and the Braves, right?
Yes.
And there was a kid in my building, Philip Benson. I don't know if you remember him or not.
I remember the name.
He lived on the third floor, and right next to him was a man who was a bachelor, and he lived with his father, who was an old man. The last name was Nathan. We always just Mr. Nathan, And this guy probably had the first color TV in the building. So when obviously they're playing the games, all the games were in the afternoon then, all the World Series games. So right after school, this Mr. Nathan said, stop in after school and you can watch some of the game. So we walk in there and watching the game in color. And for the first time, it was like unbelievable.
Yeah, he used to let all the kids come in. I remember that too.
Yeah,
I mean, that was just great.
I was 11. Yeah, so it was something else. I'll never forget that. Wow.
Well, I was 7, but I was there too.
Yes.
See, and that's the thing. When the Dodgers left, I was 7. Well, I'm always loyal. I'm not like Darryl Strawberry. And and I didn't know. They left New York. It didn't mean that much to me like it did. I saw everybody freaking out, and that's why I stayed a Dodgers fan. I mean, the Mets became my second team when 1962 rolled around, but I didn't know to hate the Dodgers,
Yeah, up until this year, you remained a Dodger fan.
That line by Tommy Lasorda about Strawberry was one of the greatest lines of all time.
It's classic.
Yeah. You
wanna repeat it for everybody?
Please.
Don't call Darryl a dog. Dogs are loyal and run hard after balls.
that was
Tommy Lasorda.
You had to love that.
Yeah.
Well, Darryl was having his substance abuse problems, and I'm not sure everybody knew that at the time.
Right.
I'm not sure what they knew with the team, but Darryl was falling apart, and they paid him a lot of money.
That's true.
And he never lived up to it, and it kind of irked me that he got a second chance with the Yankees and won a World Series or two,
Yeah, maybe he got himself together by then. You know?
Yeah. Which is good for him.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But didn't help the Dodgers any. He was supposed to be, the guy to get us over the hump.
Right. And he was.
Well, what's interesting, you mentioned the Yankees and Darryl. Yankees gave Dwight Gooden a chance as well.
Yes.
And I think that that helped Dwight, especially at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel sorry for Dwight. Just a sick pup, but oh my God, what talent!
What he could have been, yeah.
Sure. See, that's why you never know what's going to happen when you're talking about DeGrom. I went to a game. It might have been '86 or '87 at Shea Stadium with a buddy of mine, and it was Hershiser against Gooden, and they were both young phenoms, and you would have thought both of them were going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And it was a 2-1 game. It was a great game, and it was great pitching. Hershiser unfortunately had to have Tommy John or whatever. He had the injuries, and Gooden had his problems, and neither one of them made the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I remember in 1985, the Giants and the Mets coming out to Candlestick to play the Giants. And this guy blew the Giants away. He was just incredible. And the press he was getting, he was like 19 years old. And you can imagine being a guy who grows up in Florida with somewhat of in a bad area or whatever, and coming to New York. And same for Darryl. Guys grow up in bad areas, and the teams gave them no basic counseling in terms of drug abuse.
And that's when the money started to get a little bit on the big side, yeah.
Right. And but there was so much of it with the '86 Mets that it was just almost a joke. 2 or 3 guys wrote books. Perlman, I think, was one of them, about just how crazy it got in Metsville at that time.
Yep. No doubt.
And it was an appeal to people who just weren't baseball players. Whole lives were changed. Many businessmen, not just athletes, got caught up. Entertainers of all sorts.
Sure.
How many?
Look at Saturday Night Live. I mean,
yes.
That went on there for like 20 years.
And all the guys who, musicians who died like 27, I think, Janis Joplin and shit. These people didn't just die because from out of the blue when you're 27 years old. This drug abuse up the ass when you have $10 million to spend and people to get it for you. And so we lived through hectic times, and we lived through hectic times as if, whoa, that was the past. Things have really slowed down now. Not hectic at all.
Seriously.
No, seriously, this is absolute. The world situation, we're not going to talk much about it. I just want to say it's absolutely beyond surreal. Let's just put it that way. You couldn't get much crazier than this. And why this big former president, I was going to use some bad adjectives, hasn't been indicted yet. There are crimes of sabotage. People got electrocuted on less evidence. The Rosenblums or Rosenthals or whatever it was in the 50s. this guy should be taken away, and this should be made an example of.
Are they waiting to get closer to election day? I mean, I don't get it.
I've thought about that too, but I don't think they would really do that. I think there's so much evidence, and there's so much more evidence that, you got to have all your ducks in a row. You can't go in without everything, and that's the problem, because it's going to take a long time. This guy needs to go down.
Well, there's more hearings coming up, too. There's more hearings. I think the next one is around the 28th of this month, I think.
And you got the shit going on in Georgia. And you got the business stuff going on in New York. They're not going to get him for anything else in New York. And he probably won't go to jail. But what he did with Trump Industries, what Weinstein has already copped to and has been convicted of, is he Teflon? Teflon Don? Remember? It's crazy. And then every little rumor, he came up to Washington dressed in golf clothes. There were, Newsweek said there was a chance that he was ill or whatever. Gets everybody's hopes up high that the guy will just drop dead and get out of our lives. But no. Speaking of Saturday Night Live. All right, let's talk a little baseball. We don't have much time. Bernie, what do you think is the prognosis?
Well, it just very well may come down to those 3 games. The next to the last weekend of the series, I think, with Atlanta. Although if they go just 2-1, it may not make that much of a difference. Could go down to the last day, and that's unfortunate. If Scherzer comes back and pitches big, that would certainly help. You got to get hot, and you got to get hot now. It's very interesting.
Okay.
And I'm going to say one other thing. If you want to really get into a big prognosis, or maybe I mentioned it earlier already, but these 3 teams, the Dodgers, the Braves, and the Mets, I don't see the wild card teams or the Cardinals beating either one of them. So it's going to come down to them beating each other, and that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. Marty.
Yeah, well, the only teams they have left on the schedule with a winning record, besides the Braves, is I think they got 3 with the Brewers coming up.
Right.
But outside of that, a lot of Washington and Miami left, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good thing. And, I think as long as the pitching, the 5 guys stay healthy, and hopefully Marte comes back soon, I think they can hold on.
Is there a word on when Marte will be back?
Well, he has a broken index finger, so I don't know if that is something that can heal in 10 days, good enough to grip a bat. I don't know. So I haven't really heard.
Okay.
Could be longer.
Yeah, the Mets have 4 with Pittsburgh, and they have 2 with Miami, and they end with 3 with Washington. And in between, they have 3 with Oakland.
Oh, that's right.
It is on the road. Oakland, terrible.
Yeah,
so
I poo-pooed it when you said, Mert, that they have an easy schedule at the end. This is really an easy schedule, and that's why Chicago was so disappointing.
Yeah.
I hope they come back big against the Pirates. Do you have an update on the score?
5-1.
Yeah. Top of the 4th. Yeah.
Nice. All right, guys. Thank you for a great show. We missed Bob. Hope he's fine and I hope he's well. But we got to talk about Jackson Heights. That's not bad. Any day we could reminisce and just kibitz about some happy times in all of our lives, all three of our lives. Notwithstanding the pressures of growing up, and that's for another show. It wasn't easy on some levels. The school we went to, the elementary school we went to, was, all things considered, a great education. When I see how people were raised, it wasn't just the education, it was the socialization. And
absolutely.
No kids go home for lunch anymore. Remember that? We used to walk home for lunch and then come back. Nobody does that.
No.
And we did it at 6 and 7 years old by ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Nobody, I don't think, would let their kids do that today. I don't know.
I would think not. But then again, not too many people, live within 1 or 2 blocks of the school either. Everything's all spread out now.
Right.
And there were different times, like when Marty and I went to the Y on the bus alone at 10 years old.
Right.
Back and forth between Flushing and Jackson Heights, which was it'd be unheard of today to let a 10-year-old out. I raised Philip, and I wanted to keep him in the basement, let alone. The different times. So we're grateful for that, and I don't know who to thank because I'm an agnostic. So it's very, very difficult, but
well, there's no one to thank, but it's good anyway.
Yeah, right, exactly. The best we could do is thank our parents and our grandparents for raising our parents with the values that they were raised with, and I don't see that type of thing going on in this country nowadays, and I fear losing democracy.
Yeah.
Well, without a doubt.
People do not realize uneducated, stupid sons of bitches making decisions, and they're retarded kids. Sounds like the Wilpons. Anyway, and thank God they lived to sell the team. That I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. It's a magical thing. Joan Payson was a terrific owner. That was 70 years ago. I mean,
hard to imagine, isn't it?
Yeah, hard to imagine. Okay, Uncle Steve out there, wherever you are, thank you. So that's who we could thank for all blessings.
There you go.
All right, Uncle Steve Cohen, who happens to be younger than all three of us. So that's
good show.
It was a good show. I enjoy your company, and I have memories up the pursuit about the wonderful ways of Jack and Ruth Rose. It was so mellow. They had such a great rapport, a working relationship, and the way they raised you guys was terrific. Nicest guys in the neighborhood. Marty and Bernie Rose. Love you both, and thanks for listening, everybody. It's especially fun for me, and I don't like having fun. So, because if it ain't fun, it shouldn't be getting done. And that's how I've lived my life for the most part, as much as possible. And I'm glad we had this time together, as Carol Burnett would say. All right, guys. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Have a great one.
Have a terrific one, Bernie. Have a terrific one, Marty.
Yep.
And everybody listening, Comfortably Zoned Radio, the Mets in the Zone. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all. And we'll talk soon. Thank you again. Adios.
All right.
Happy trails.
Good night.
Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.